Okay, now we're going to talk about. I'm laughing because it's so relatable, right? Why are most workplaces toxic? And this is a really important lesson because it's going to show you that it's not just your workplace and it's not just the places you've worked and it's not just you, it's systemic. Okay, so let's talk about why it happens so that you have a better understanding of what causes it so you can get in front of it and help it to stop. So, why do workplaces become toxic? Workplaces are super complex and they're a mix of diverse personalities with very imperfect processes. So over time, that's just going to cause chaos. It also leads to miscommunication when people have very unclear roles and there's just poor leadership and unresolved conflicts. Over time, all of that together creates a lot of friction. And then you just add in pressure without support, and toxicity is often the default. Let's just zoom out and even point this to our family systems. You know, maybe you come from a perfect family and you all love each other and everyone gets along great. There's no crazy Aunt Sally that nobody talks to, and there's no Uncle Joe who, they always come to talk about politics and they want to argue with you if you don't agree and you're just not equipped and you don't want to verbally spar with them. It happens at work too. There's all these different characters and the way that we present based on what happened to us in childhood, which is a totally different, deeper part of the conversation. But that's generally what causes it. And that's a lot. And it leads us to default into our trauma responses. And we have these in our personal life too. So at the end, I'm going to give you some book recommendations. If you want to go deeper, I highly suggest you do. But there are 4 trauma responses. Trauma doesn't mean someone blunt force hit you on the head, although it could. That's literal trauma, physical trauma. Trauma is like anything that doesn't happen the way it's supposed to that causes people to be stressed based on what we just showed you on the last slide. So you've got your fight trauma response, or the bully. This person loves confrontation, micromanagement, and defensiveness. This is like every manager, almost, not every. A lot of managers present this way. And they get upset when things aren't happening quickly and productivity's down. They default into a fight response. Then you have the flight response, or the workaholic. This person avoids conflict and overworks to escape stress. The freeze trauma response is more apathetic, almost even, you could say quiet quitting in a way, but it's indecision and shutting down under pressure. There's no clarity. I don't really know what success looks like. You just gave me this big project with a quick deadline on top of my other work. I'm just going to get on Amazon and do some online shopping. And then the fawn, or the people pleaser response, is when this person prioritizes harmony over their own needs. So what's really interesting about all of these is we all have primary and secondary trauma responses, although I tended to default into all 4 of them at a certain point. Usually what happens in my experience for me was I would initially default to freeze. Like I wouldn't know how to start a project or own something because it wasn't clear how to do it. Then I would jump into flight and just try to work on it really hard and just I think I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And this was before ChatGPT, where you really couldn't find clear answers on things as a knowledge worker. And then as I was missing my deadline, or maybe fearing that I wasn't doing it correctly, or I was getting closer to having to turn it in or show someone or my boss who was scary, I would default into fawn, which was like, oh, everything's going great. I'm so excited to show this to you. Instead of saying hey, this was weird. This was hard for me. Can you be more clear next time? And if that didn't go well, if I had a manager or leader say, this isn't good enough. What have you done? I don't like this. I don't like the way this project was completed. It was not on time, or it was not the way I wanted it to be. Then I would jump into fight and I'd be like, hey, how was I supposed to know that? I can't read your mind. And I would confuse people, but this isn't unique to me. We all have these tendencies. So you don't always touch on every single one. And some of these, like fight is my last resort. It's like when I feel backed into a corner. And sometimes I don't do freeze. Sometimes I go from flight straight into fight. But it depends on what is happening and what is causing me to feel upset or stressed in a certain way. So I'm curious if any of these feel familiar to you, and if you've already looked into this, what your favorite little toxic mix of trauma responses could be. And by the way, these don't mean you're a bad person. We all have these. This is the human nature part of driving engagement that no one teaches you, which is why I wanted to teach it to you, because it's kind of important. We all have these things in life. And again, think about your family, think about your partner, your kids, yourself, your neighbors, that difficult person, or that person that's always late, that person that's always got an excuse, that person who always does things to you that make you upset. We have these ways of protecting ourselves. So trauma responses are a way of our brain trying to keep us safe. And because we're not cave people running away from tigers anymore, we're living in a modern life, and this stuff can cause conflict. So the general symptoms of a toxic work environment, we're going to go through these really quick, and they're expensive. All of these things we're about to discuss and bullet out are what causes your company to lose money. People are literally struggling and suffering, but also when any of these unfold, it's causing your company to not be as high performing as it could be. So people feeling overwhelmed, difficulty concentrating, emotional outbursts, withdrawal from colleagues. I mean, I've done all of these. Avoidance of certain tasks. Maybe you have too. Changes in sleep patterns. This one was big. When I had young kids and I went back to work and the way the work was getting done wasn't very clear. Oh my gosh, I was getting no sleep, which made me an awful person to work with and just very slow and not really contributing to meetings because I just did not know what was going on. I was so low on the hierarchy of needs. You can have physical symptoms like headaches. For me, it was always chest pain, decreased productivity. Like there's just no get up and go. There's no excitement. There's no like, let's get it done. Let's do the thing. It's like, oh God, I have to work again. And just a general sense of distrust or fear. And that's why people don't take surveys. And that's why people won't be honest in the surveys if they do take them, because they don't know what's going to happen. And we cover that in the surveys section, how to make sure people know that what you're doing is not to get them fired. It's to help them do their best work. So these are the things that are often mentioned. I wish I would just let myself get to the next bullet. Allow me to repeat myself, but in a slightly different way. These things are often mentioned in very hidden ways on your surveys. So people won't literally say, oh, I'm having emotional outbursts. But other people will say like, there's times where there's emotional outbursts in meetings and it's uncomfortable. Or people will say like, I don't have enough time to get I have no bandwidth. I have no time to get all my work done. I don't know. I'm getting confused on which way is up because everything is due all the time right away. That's someone feeling overwhelmed. Not feeling connected to your coworkers. People will say like, I just don't really connect with anyone. That's withdrawal from colleagues. People aren't reaching out and fostering connections on their own. And it's because everyone's kind of stuck in a trauma response. I'm going to include a link to this blog post that I found. This great woman on Instagram, I think it's a man. But regardless, this person has really detailed out the four, I don't know why it's called the 4F, but the 4 trauma personality types. And this is a really cool little cross section here. We've got each of the 4 trauma responses. And out here in the corners is when they're at their worst. So someone with a flight trauma response can be panicky, worrying, rushing. They're very driven, but like too much. They just got to achieve. They're an adrenaline junkie. They're a busyholic. Here it says micromanager, but like this is more like you can micromanage yourself. You can just be like trying to do all the things. But then when they're at their more healing, more balanced homeostasis self of their flight response, this says disengagement, but it doesn't mean employee disengagement. It means like disengagement from their identity in the outcome. Like you are not your work. You have worth. Do you know what I mean? They have a healthy retreat from things that don't serve them. They don't have to just like jump into doing the thing. They're like, no, this doesn't land on my radar this week unless, there's competing priorities. You want to tell me what the priority is, but I can't do it all. And yeah, they're a little bit more objective. So each of these has the 4 responses at their best and at their worst. So I thought this would be helpful. This is going really deep. You might be like, Christy, that's too much. But some of you, I think, are going to really enjoy the process of really getting clear on what this is, not just for your workforce, but for yourself. Because self-awareness is the first step to like taking back control in your life and leaning into your power of influence. When you know how you tend to show up when you're upset, you can catch yourself and remember, you're not the thinker of your thoughts. You are just a human having a human experience, and you can like hijack your brain out of a trauma response. This is very pixelated, but this was another really interesting way at kind of looking at the same information. So I'll link out to this too. I really liked it because it had even catchphrases. So like the fight, bully trauma response, their catchphrases, there's no relationships here, just prisoners. This, again, is like a lot of executives, right? Like, I'm not going to let anyone in. I'm just going to force them to do what I want. The workaholic is like, I'm just a human doing. I have no value unless I'm being incredible and I'm getting all the recognition. This is why peer recognition programs can be accidentally a little toxic sometimes. If you have like a hustle culture, you're rewarding people for putting their needs last. The freeze response, or the couch potato, as they put it, is, I want to hide from the world. I don't want to be seen. I just want to get by. This is quiet quitting. This is like, don't talk to me. Don't notice me. Just pay me and let me go about my day. And then the fawn, their catchphrase is, as long as everyone's happy, everything's going to be okay. I was really good at this one. I was always like earlier in my career, I was not. I was a very like human doing. I have no value unless I'm working all the time. But later in my career, as I developed my soft skills, I realized if people liked me, they were much more likely to work with me if I was having a bad day, or they wouldn't get mad at me, or my bosses, I could manipulate them into like not giving me so much work, or at least being more gentle on me when all the insane amount of workload they gave me didn't get done as fast as they wanted it to. Like, they would at least still like me. So this is just all of us not being our authentic selves, who have valid feelings and emotions. And I just thought this was interesting, so I included it for you. And because this topic is so deep, like I promised you, I have 3 books that you might want to check out, and I will link out to them in the description. Complex PTSD is a thick Bible book, but I listened to it on Audible, and it was really eye-opening to hear the storytelling of, what happens to us as children, whether your parents worked a lot and they didn't really pay attention to you, or you were the oldest of like 13 siblings, and you got parentified really young, or if your parents pushed you really hard to be an achiever. This is helping you get really clear on what happened to you as a kid. I know that's the next book, What Happened to You. You see where this is going. But what happened to you in your childhood has a lot to do with how you show up as an adult. And we just repeat the same patterns. And this book helps you to recognize the patterns so you can pull yourself out and have healthier reactions to everyday life. I listen to it on Audible, but I keep a book in my house too, just to like flip to certain pages, because it's so comprehensive when I look at the table of contents. If I'm having a bad day, I can grab this book and just like thumb through it like, yup, I'm spiraling. I'm like working on everything and nothing. What's wrong? I need to get to the root of what's actually wrong. What Happened to You is a great book from Oprah and some other guy named Bruce, apparently. But this one helped me to have a lot of empathy for executives and people who show up at work who are the brilliant jerk. Someone treated them that way. It's not that it's okay, but this book helps you to understand more why people act so ridiculous. And I just think it's been a really helpful tool to get clear on the human nature. And again, not to forgive everything, but to understand why. Sometimes it's helpful to know why. And then lastly, the 4 agreements. I read this like once a year just to get a good reminder on how to not take things personally, how to just let things, this book's kind of all about life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you handle it. This book gives you a very clear quadrant how to kind of clean up the way you show up in life, to not speak poorly about people behind their back, to not speak poorly about yourself. And it just helped me to have a little bit more of a balanced, stoic framework stoicism is also about like, it just is. It's not good or bad. It just is what it is. This has helped me keep my center. And I get something new from it every year. It's one of those magical books where you're like, I've read this so many times, but this time this is what stuck out to me. So the biggest takeaway for this lesson is that toxicity, it's going to happen. The global workforce is disengaged, but it doesn't happen overnight. So it's not always obvious what's going on. And it's the result of unresolved communication gaps, misaligned expectations, and unmanaged stress responses. And my question to you is, what are the most glaring toxic behaviors right now at your organization? And I know that may feel like a very vulnerable question to ask, so maybe you just want to write it down, but that is something that you should be thinking about. And I want to make sure, I remind you, I created this community so that you had a safe space to be real. Nobody's going to go through and like screenshot you and blast you on the internet. But if you're afraid of that, go ahead and just send me a DM and tell me what your answer is. But you should definitely go through the exercise here to just start thinking differently about why your workplace is toxic and what's really obvious right now that you could begin thinking through how to fix with sending surveys, which we will cover in the survey section. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next lesson.